Today we will be going through resources in relation to attendance, and it's all about, for this, obviously about us wanting to grow in our practice and build relationships, I would say, is a really key part of this one today, and just think about what it is that we're learning and how we go about doing it. And we very much hope that you enjoy the session today and find it really useful. So first of all, an introduction to your two presenters today. So my name is Laura Starkey and I'm a CLD Education Officer here at Education Scotland. And I'll just ask my colleague to introduce himself as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jamie Dungavel. I'm also an Education Officer at Education Scotland, and myself and Laura work together on this particular area of work. So hopefully you find the work that we've created today useful, and we can guide you through it and you can see how it'll be practical within your own settings.
Brilliant, thanks for that, Jamie. So yeah, so in today's session, what we are going to be doing is looking at various different toolkits that you can use within the area of attendance. So what we're going to be doing is taking you through the process that we've done and the data collection, which has gone into the kind of background to these resources, so that you can see that what we've done is really co-produce some of these from evidence from stakeholders. Then what we've done is we've created a toolkit which is in 3 different sections. So we're going to take you through each of those different sections so that you can see how that you can use them and what's there within it. So the 3 sections, there's one which is about partnership principles for improving attendance. There's then a section on community partnership mapping. And then there's also a six-step guide to improving partnerships. Afterwards, we will allow opportunities for questions. What I would suggest is if you want to, as we're going through we're going to go through all of the resources. If you have questions on particular sections of the resources, just put them up into the chat as soon as you have them. And Jamie and I will come at the end and come back to those questions and try and answer as many as we can today, obviously within the time that we have, but any that we don't answer certainly will be useful to us in case we need to produce anything alongside these. So please feel free to put anything that you want to in the chat in relation to that we may find useful. One of the things I would remind people is we do have people, as I said, from all over Scotland, all from different settings that are part of this call today. I know that we've got folks from primary schools, high schools, from CLD settings, from our partner organisations. So quite a range of organisations who are here today to learn about these resources and how you can use them. I'd suggest that some of the resources might stand out more to you depending on your setting and also depending on your experience in relation to partnership working. So you may find that some of it, you grab hold to and it takes you really, you think that's where we need to start, or maybe a different section might jump out at you in that way, and that's perfectly fine. And we'll go through these resources and you'll see where you can engage with them and start using them. And so, as we said, we're not expecting that people will use these in exactly the same way, depending on your organisation or depending on where you're at in your own experience and in your own setting with partnership working. So I think that's just good as a wee introduction. Jamie, before I lead on to you and you start taking us through some of the background, if that's okay.
And it's just to add as well, before you continue there, Laura, that we do have the option for asking questions in the chat, but we know sometimes it's easy to ask questions anonymously. So we have set up a Slido today, and when we come to the end of the presentation, we'll be answering any of those kind of anonymous questions, just to make sure that every potential base is covered.
Great. So if we can get stuck in, if you want to start letting us know about what was the background to this attendance project, Jamie, and how did we start off doing it?
So thanks, Laura. What we're looking to do today is tell you more about this attendance work stream that we have in Education Scotland, and then specifically how it links to our work stream in regards to partnership and multi-agency working. So what I'm going to do is talk you through some of these key elements, but then actually demonstrate the resources we've created as a result of this work. The attendance project is something that's been running in Education Scotland since the summer of last year, and we're working across the various teams that exist in the agency to look to ways to improve attendance for children and young people. This can be through governance, it can be through policy, it can be through practice, and also principles in regards to how practitioners work together. I will show you the various other aspects of it just to make you aware of what attends the workstream looks like and what we look to propose as avenues for you to support yourself and your peers. But ultimately, the main bulk of what we focus on today is the partnership and multi-agency working elements. So the links to this are within the presentation there, but I will take you through them and give you the chance to see these in more kind of detailed settings, because again, I think the best way to demonstrate the work that we've done is by kind of highlighting it from this kind of source. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring up our main site that we use in Education Scotland and show you how to navigate to these from that particular area, because again, we want to make sure it's as accessible as possible. So just, Laura, does that came up, just to make sure?
Hold on. There we go. Yep, that's us up now.
Excellent. So when you access our main site, again, if you're wanting to find any of the resources, we've got all our drop-down tabs here. But when it comes to attendance, it's nice and simple. It's about typing the word attendance into the search bar at the top, and that'll take you through straight to our top selection there, which is approving attendance in Scotland. When you arrive in this landing page, you'll see the variety of different tiles that exist around the different areas of how we look to improve attendance. And I'll just touch upon these briefly before I'm moving into our kind of main area. So we have this section here, which is the Understanding Issues and Attendance report. And it's a national report that was compiled to look at what the kind of main aspects of attendance difficulties and challenges are across the 32 local authorities within Scotland. Some of the actions that are come as a result of that, some of the sort of reflections as well. So again, it's a good reference point for understanding the larger landscape when it comes to attendance within the country. We've also got our next area, which is about developing plans, policies, guidance. We have YouTube videos within here. Specifically, elements of this that might be useful for practitioners is about creating local policy within your own setting. Does that mean like setting policy things within a school context or a local authority context? And then ultimately, what are the statutory requirements with regards to attendance? So again, these are really good touch points if again, you're sort of demonstrating that interest in improving attendance with your own setting or want to find new ways to kind of have a strategic direction to improve it. We have an element here about understanding data, and I think this is really useful to see what the picture looks like across the country. So we've got links to the school education statistics for Scotland as a whole, the Scottish Government statistics, but we also have information specifically for local authorities to understand what attendance looks like in their own settings, and that can be broken down over various months and various years. And that information is compiled from our insight team, how they capture data around the qualifications, but also information from CMIS. So again, a really good reference point when you're thinking about how do I look at the larger landscape and also the data around that in its very specific sense. And the final area here before we go into our main section is about effective strategies. And this is just a variety of different areas in regards to primary and secondary and local authority case studies where things have been done or specific pieces of work have been done to improve attendance. Now, this is the initial part of this, and this work stream is much longer lasting than these core elements. And Laura will tell you a little bit later about our second phase of the work stream, which is coming out very soon, and how that kind of relates to that further exemplification of what works in improving attendance. So without further ado, I'd like to take you through our resources that we've developed when it comes to partnership and multi-agency working. So when we developed this work, we wanted to create something that was really practical for practitioners to use, but also created those really quite specific questions about how partnership working should look and how you design partnership working in a way that actually makes the greatest possible impact. Now, we have highlighted the key partners that are normally involved here. Some are local authority colleagues, such as community learning development and social work. Others are third sector organisation and other public sector colleagues, such as health and police. But when we reference partnership, we mean anybody that works in that desired interest to work in unison with a school or a school body to look to improve attendance. And what we've done as a result here is we've created a trio of resources, and these trio of resources are designed to be used together, one after another, to help you go through the steps that are required to effectively create a strong and relevant partnership. Before I go into the first one though, I'd like to just highlight some of our related content here, which is areas in which we are developing and continue developing that are beyond just these resources in the toolkit we've created. So some of the aspects of this related content relate to the other parts of our attendance workstream. So we have specifically around about designing attendance-based workshops, But we also have other resources that link to national partners. So what we have here is our Lost in Transition resource, which is a really effective tool that's been developed with ourselves and YouthLink Scotland, who are the National Agency for Youth Work, to help practitioners within school settings and youth work sessions to understand the difficulties in language, because language is such a powerful tool, but understanding how that can sometimes present a barrier to working in partnership with others, as well as responsibilities and roles. We also have our podcast here that we did and created just before Christmas there, where we worked with YouthLink again and also some of our attainment advisors to look about some of the kind of key questions around about attendance and partnership, why some of these attendance partnership work, processes are really strong, what are the kind of key lessons that should be learned from the work that's been done across the country. And it's a really good piece of information to listen to if you're thinking about wanting to hear the story of what's currently been done over the last sort of year. And our final sort of related piece of content is a critical conversation with HMI. And we facilitated a discussion with HMI inspectors who had visited primary and secondary establishments and also community learning development establishments to look at essentially what has been working and what they've noticed in practice works well for attendance. So again, the pieces of partnership working that make the real impact and for families, for children, for young people. So that piece of professional learning has again been recorded and you can access it and you can reflect on it as something to discover ideas when you're thinking about your own setting. So without further ado, I want to move on to our sort of main elements when it comes to our resources here. And I think to just set the tone here, what we wanted to do is working with the sector, all sectors, we wanted to create something that was relevant about changing thinking about what partnerships are and essentially what they effectively do. Ultimately, when it comes to partners, they are crucial in making a real impact to attendance issues for children and young people. And they really have the ability to facilitate and support and develop, truly create unique ways to work with children and young people and families to improve attendance. And this is something that's unique to that partnership role. Sometimes in formal education, it became quite constrained in the impacts you can make and the differences you can do because of other restrictions and time pressures. But working with partners offer that wealth of experience and also that flexibility that sometimes doesn't exist. These resources have been designed to provide the scaffolding to allow practitioners to improve their partnership working and shape this in an equal way. This creates relevancy in the way the schools and partners work together and also ensures that both are seen as equal contributors to the providing solutions to attendance for children and young people. So our first piece of the trio of resources is our partnership principles. And the way this has been developed is consulting partnership agencies and providers across the country, across all 32 local authorities, to tell us what the kind of key elements are when it comes to the principles of creating effective partnerships when addressing attendance. And what we've done here is created a suite of information that essentially reflects on what is required when people are working together to address attendance. And these principles are really quite keen because this is the foundation of proper culture when tackling attendance. So some of the elements about what needs to change in regards to communication and also the other elements in regards to how to maintain strong partnerships and how they're not seen as something that's simply done for a short period of time. The way we've developed this resource is to be very accessible, so these kind of subsections can break down in what you're looking to access, such as if you want to develop awareness of the factors that lead to attendance issues, some you'll be very aware of, such as poverty, family dynamics, mental health, but also being aware of that no single solution works to improve attendance. Things need to be tailored based on individual circumstances and individual settings. Now, there are downloadable versions of this site, this piece of resource, and it's very easy to access this through our PDF link here. But we recommend that you would use these partnership principles to kind of set the foundations before you can begin any strong partnership working when it comes to attendance. To make this even easier, what we've looked to do is make it have a visual component to that. And we have a visualizer, which is essentially a way of demonstrating these kind of key elements. And I'll just bring that up just now. This is a good kind of talking point when it comes to those initial conversations, when it comes to working with partners, and again, with partners when it comes to working with schools. So it sets that parity and how we work together. And again, this has been developed across the country, consulting multiple stakeholders to see what they felt worked well and what didn't work well. So our main headings, which relate back to the main document there, is about awareness of the dynamics and effect attendance issue, the idea of the different skills and qualities practitioners need. Without these skills and qualities, the impact it's made is severely diminished. And having these skills and qualities increases this dramatically. So patience, empathy, trust. Communication is also a key part of this in regards to where communication takes place, how parents and families are communicated with, and the way that communication is facilitated, the interest, the transparency, all very important things. And then the aspect of early intervention, when that's conducted, how often it's done, and also the approaches that are created, the activities that are done as a result to develop early intervention, how important that is to address attendance issues before they become overly challenges. And then we've had an element again within the overall resource for principles about the things that need to change, like unrealistic expectation, deadlines. Our research and evidence show these things do not work and they do not improve attendance when it comes to working in partnerships. So keeping that very much at the front and centre of any work that's done, and not implying those kind of approaches. Otherwise, they will not succeed as strongly as they could. And ultimately, the kind of fundamental aspect of what a strong partnership looks like, some of the key headings as a result of that, and developing on them and understanding their long-term commitments. This visualizer is very much there as a guide to start that talking element. And when it comes to actually using the principles, they are fully in depth here, and they formulate those kind of discussion areas alongside the downloadable version. So that's the first part. We would recommend practitioners look at that before they begin to do any activities, any mapping, any steps, because if the principles aren't in place, it means that the work going forward might not be as strong. I'm now going to pass to Laura, who will take you through our next two sections around about community mapping and the 6 steps to effective partnership.
Oh, that's great. Thanks very much, Jamie. So yeah, I think it's fair to say, and again, this is just recognising that we've got lots and lots of people on this call, and you'll all be aware that there's lots and lots of people all around Scotland who are all in different places with some of this work. So some of that might seem quite straightforward to you, and that's really great if it does. I know to some others on this call, it might seem quite new, and that's really where you kind of need to start with. So just to acknowledge that there's different people and different experiences that we're well aware of on this call, and that you can use these tools in whichever way fits your organisation and your experience the best. So the next part of the suite of tools we've got is a community partnership mapping tool. As Jamie said, so that's again in this same section. You'll see down the right hand side. We're now down at number 4. So the first part of this again is a visualizing tool. So if you can bring that up for me, that'd be awesome. So this is really good to kind of start off your thinking, and again, you can either sit down yourself and do this, or potentially sit down with partners. It really depends on your setting and where you're sitting at with some of the experience within this. So obviously the visualizer, we're going to put the child at the centre of that, because they're the most kind of important. So thinking of the child and their family, whatever that family looks like in terms of parents, carers, etc. And then really what we're looking at within this then is when you're starting to go outside of that pupil or young person, where these other sections then link, and what is happening within that community partnership in your area. So again, being really aware that every community is slightly different for so many different reasons, as I'm sure you're all aware. So whatever you're sitting at today, wherever your setting is going to look really different in relation to each of these rings. So it's really important that you look at what each of these rings mean in relation to the child and young person. So again, thinking about that individual child or young person and what's happening with them around attendance. So the child, young person, we then have their families, so that's coming to the next one, which could be, as I said, the guardians, it could be wider family, it could also be friends sitting within that. The next one outside of that is then a school network. So thinking again about what does that look like for them? Is there teachers involved? There could be CLD and youth workers involved. What peer support is there? What partner organisations might already be involved or may not, as the case may be. So then thinking next is our kind of grey ring, which is around that kind of multi-agency support. So again, depending if you have CLD available, they might be in your area. You may have third sector organisations who are also there in your area. Educational psychology, who again is a partner that many of you, I'm quite sure, use very regularly, along with social work, and have those links. But what does that look like for this individual child or young person that we're talking about when you're focusing on that? So coming back to that individual again, and thinking how unique that is. And then you've got the community context above that, which is then then thinking about your kind of local policy and drivers and what that kind of looks like around national policy, etc., etc. So that's that kind of outer rings of that circle. Page 2 of this document, which again gives you, you'll see that there's a lot of writing on there, which you can have a look at afterwards. I know it's quite a wee bit tricky to read when you're online. The left-hand side of this, you'll see, just goes into essentially what I've spoken through there, each of those rings. And again, it's all color-coded, so you can follow that color coding down. And then on the right-hand side, what we have is just some key questions. So these are your kind of challenge questions to start thinking about and asking yourself in relation to that community mapping. So what can partners offer or provide that potentially it's difficult for you to provide within a school setting, but maybe a partner organisation can provide that? And I know we have some partners on the call today. So again, what can they provide that isn't there within the school? How are we involving all of the right partners to support attendance in the school? So we may have some partners involved. Are they the right ones? Are they everyone that's there? Do we know everybody who's in our area? Maybe, maybe not. So then thinking again about the pupils that we're supporting in relation to them. So thinking that again, what about their needs? Are their needs being met? And if they're not, what is happening around those needs that we need to support? And we're really thinking about equalities in relation to that, which I'm sure you're all aware really hits around attendance in so many ways, whether that's dyslexia, LGBT, plus any of these kind of issues, mental health, health and wellbeing, all sitting there within that we need to take on board. Scroll down slightly for me, Jamie, just to come down to those other couple of questions for me. So then we also have, again, thinking about the processes and resources. So that's within your school organisation, thinking about barriers that maybe we need to then start working to break down and see what we can do around participation and about that kind of to ensure equity in relation to it, or are we focusing things in relation to the pupils who need it best? And as I said, those equalities areas that I've already mentioned are in there, and obviously we've got a lot of information around anti-racism and gender as well that are there that we need to take on board. So thinking about our additional support needs. So some challenge questions that you can really think about and you can start working on it in relation to that community mapping tool. If we go back to the web page now, Jamie, that'd be great. So taking us back, this is the, you'll see here, again, just making sure I've given you a bit of awareness when you're looking at the web page. That first link there, that was the PDF that Jamie had clicked on there. You'll see again underneath that, you've got the purpose with the wee down arrows and the tool descriptors and the questions to consider while mapping. They're all there in a text format if you prefer to follow it going down via those means and go into it in a bit more detail. But that PDF at the start gives you all of the visualizer as we're talking about in relation to those. Then the next tool that we have is called the 6 steps. Excuse me, I've got a cough, 1 sec. Sorry, nobody needs to hear that. So the next step in relation to this is our 6 steps. So this is what we're suggesting is that if you're looking at working effectively in partnership, supporting attendance, this is a kind of 6-step guide that you can use. So quite a practical tool that you can use around how you would go about that. Or if you're already working in partnership, how you would potentially some of these areas or maybe things that you need to improve on, maybe to help you understand what partnership working is, or it may be that you need to delve deeper into the partnership working that you're actually doing to make it really and truly effective. It may be that you're just working with people, but not necessarily in partnership, for instance. So this guide really goes into that to kind of drill into some of that detail and what it means. So what we've done is we've created a practical document for this as well. So you'll see here it's a downloadable document that you can take there off of the website, and it goes through each of the 6 steps as you're going through it. So if you take me down, yeah, give me step 1, that'd be perfect. I'm not going to go through, as you'll see, there is a lot on here. So we are not going to go through each one of these tasks individually because it would just take too long. The idea with this document is, so if you pause there for me, Jamie, the idea for this is that you would look at this particular document. It may be, we're about to show you a visualizer. So it may be for some people on this call that you really do need to start on step 1. So what we're suggesting is if you're starting on step 1, so this one here, you'll see, you can see it's looking at some data. So you want to be then working through this 6-step guide, and essentially you'll see the column on the right hand side there is almost like a tick box, is to think about, have we done that? Have we done that step? Can we move on from there? What does that step really mean? Now, what you'll see on this page, which is why I got Jamie to post it as well, at 1.5, we're suggesting you need to assess and identify your current strengths and areas of development in support and attendance. That may be one that you think, yes, we do need to assess and identify where our current strengths lie within our school or organisation setting. So what we've done in the document is we've then embedded other resources that we know are out there for you so that you can use things that are potentially have already been created. So the example there is a document over in Forth Valley in West Lothian, which was a self-evaluation toolkit, which we're saying is actually quite useful and ties in very well with 1.5 within that. And then as you scroll down the document, you will see other resources that we have mentioned there, lost in translation, for instance, also some research, the Lundy model of participation that you may all be aware of or may not. But what we're doing is linking those in here so that you can start using things that are already there and are able for you to be able to download and use, linked to each of these steps as you go through them. And then what I'll do is, Jamie, I'll maybe just, because I know scrolling on the screen isn't great, I was going to say if you want to move to the visualizer and we'll just go through the 6 steps on that document because it's a bit easier to look at on the screen. But you can see from what Jamie was showing you there, you do need to download the document, print it off, read it yourself, and it's going to be down to you and your organisation where you need to start. So as I said, we would suggest starting at step 1, just to make sure if you're going to go through it really effectively. But it may be that you've got really well developed steps within your organisation and so that's really down for you and your organisation to decide. So this step, again, this might be useful as just an overview to that bigger document. And again, we're calling them the visualizer. So it's just to help. And again, this is just an acknowledgement that lots of people learn and work in different ways. I know personally, I am a very visual learner. So I find visual things really help me when I'm using things as a guide. So again, depending where you're on in this call, we're all very individual. Some people will love these. Some people might think, I don't need that. I just need the PDF Word document. And that's great. So just do what is right for you and what you learn from best. So this 6-step guide, it said, is a visualizer, and it gives you this overview of what those 6 steps are. So I'll be mindful of time and we'll just do them reasonably quickly, Jamie, if that's okay. So the first step that we're looking at is we're kind of suggesting to people is you need to have a look at your data. So that is looking at what your attendance data is, what local intelligence is in your vision, and collate that data in relation to that community mapping tool that we mentioned earlier. They need to be used together because it's about mapping out and investigating what's happening around data and what you've got personally within your own community setting. And by that, we're talking about a community setting, not just a school setting. We then obviously have discussing with the child and family. We'll all be aware of the UNCRC and how important it is to ensure that we're including the child and the family as early as possible in any conversations, and that they should be part of those discussions in any meaningful way, and to try and build on a kind of trusted relationship with those. And again, this is where our partners may be really key in developing those and supporting those relationships, depending on the circumstances of the individual child we're talking about around attendance. If you could scroll down for me, Jamie. Thank you. So the other areas we then need to start thinking about is what those funding arrangements are. So thinking again about those kind of sustainability and reporting systems that we have and what the partnership contributions are in relation to that. We've mentioned local SAC plans and school improvement plans. So what do they look like? What's in there? What's been listed in there? And how those partners contribute and what those contributions look like within those plans. We've then got the really important part of the actual collaboration with partners. So this is really then where we need to start practical conversations and shared planning. And that's what's really important, is that we've got all of this data and we've got everything that's going on, but we need to really then look at what is our vision and what is it that we're going to be exploring to deliver together. Because at the end of the day, the partners are as keen as any school or setting to improve attendance and support the child and young person. So thinking about what does that mean and what does it look like, and this is where we can link around alternative curriculums and outcomes, and what does that shared planning mean and what does it do. So as I said, the guide goes into lots of details. Really important after we have that collaboration with partners that we have an agreement in relation to what it is that we're going to be delivering, what are the roles that we're all going to be doing, and what are the responsibilities that each of us have. So including the partners who are involved, including the school, who's going to do what, when and how. And that's really important that we then have that as a collaborative partnership that they're agreed, and that you have that and can monitor it and then can track that information. And then the last one there is obviously really important, which is then about celebrating the impact and the evaluation of that partnership legacy, where we can try and capture outcomes, and whether that's looking at sharing these across your local authority area, linking it around local authority stretch aims, and obviously getting that included in relation to any evaluations that are appropriate to do. I'm going to pause there for a second. Sorry, I've got a bit of a cough, so I'm like pausing so that I'm just having to take a puff. Right, so that is our visualizer document, and hopefully that's taken you through. I'm mindful of time here, Jamie, as well, and so I think I'm going to hand over to you at this point.
Yeah, and I think it's just quite important to highlight that these resources, they're not designed to be prescriptive solutions in the way of this is the specific processes you should be doing with partners and delivering within your setting. They're designed to be given as a scaffolding to build upon what can be done in any setting to make sure partnerships are strong, sustainable, and coherent. We've designed these resources in conjunction with partners and contributors from all different sectors across education within the country. So it's not just ourselves at Education Scotland that have found that these are really useful. We've found that they've been trialled and tested in the language, in the process, and the understanding. So moving forward, what we would encourage practitioners to think about is how can they use these particular resources to strengthen what they're already doing, or if they don't currently work in partnership with anybody, how they can start to have those conversations with third sector organisations, with CLD, with youth work, with other agencies. How can you start to form good partnerships? Because more and more we are seeing clear evidence that partnership working provides real, sustainable and impactful solutions to improving children and young people's attendance across the country. So I'm just going to take off these slides just now, or take off the website, and we're just going to go back to the slides. I just want to do one thing before we highlight that, or go back to that point, is again just to highlight that these are a trio. They should be all used in conjunction with one another to give them the strength. Like Laura said, the visualizer is there specifically to help you visualize it in each of the settings, but the main documents and the main elements are always downloadable. So even our principles, which I didn't show before, they are kind of listed in full detail as a downloadable element, and a lot of practitioners will find that very useful if they want to discuss it in teams or they want to discuss it in multi-agency meetings. So again, that's something to kind of reference to when it comes to how to use these resources properly. So Laura, I'm just going to stop sharing. We're going to bring up the slides if that's okay. There we go. Now, just to kind of hopefully for the last sort of maybe 5 or 10 minutes when it comes to the presentation today, what we're hoping is to think about your own individual sessions and how you would like to use these resources. Now, we're just going to have this as an open potential asking individual questions, people putting their hands up if they choose. Again, we have the Slido open, which are links for in the chat already, or you can actually put something specifically in the chat area. But we want you to consider how you specifically would use these resources in your setting. Now, we've reached out to various local authorities already who have trialled them, and they have demonstrated to us that they can be used, just as Laura highlighted before, in different ways. So focusing on different elements in regards to working very specifically on the principles to understand there's a team of people that are really dedicated and focused on improving attendance. So they embed those principles and understand that they are the governing elements of any work that they do. We've had other aspects in other local authorities where they've demonstrated using the kind of 6 steps, and they've worked through that in a very prescriptive and systematic way to create a really strong partnership. And then when they've got that in place, then ultimately they can use that to develop activity, provision, alternative curriculum, impact, inputs, etc. that I've done as a result. And just one thing to highlight, this is one part of this attendance resource. Our next sort of phase of the attendance resource in regards to the work stream within Education Scotland is exemplification, where we'll be further demonstrating ways in which this can be done. So I know previously we highlighted on the page examples from primary and secondary settings where attendance has been done, or attendance working has been improved through case studies. What we're doing in our next phase is we'll have examples from across the country where partnership working has been done within schools and it's made a real difference in a school community, out with a school community, but involving the school. So there'll be examples there that people can learn from and try themselves, because again, sometimes when you've got the guidance and the scaffolding in place, it doesn't do any harm to see what others have done to pick up from that. So with that in mind, we'd like to just open it up and ask people to answer these sort of specific questions. If there is any ways you think you can use these resources, how do you think you would do it? Do you think these resources support the work you currently do and enhance it? And which section do you think was the most useful? So I'm keeping an eye on the Slido just now. If there's anything anybody wants to ask in the chat, and it's just for the remaining sort of 5 minutes or so, if anybody wants to come in and ask anything specific about these resources. So yeah, Lee, that's an excellent question. The examples where they've been trialled thus far, they've not been conducted in independent schools. It's mainly been done in public sector settings, specifically within local authorities. We have been quite broad in how we've designed these, so we've not taken any sort of liberties in assuming that any individual setting has particular things in place. We've taken mind of that in regards to different individual settings in regards to urban and rural as well. So we're quite confident in how these resources have been developed. They can apply to the majority of different kind of settings. And we understand that not every kind of particular setting would have the same access to partners. Some might have an abundance if they're quite a built up in urban area, whereas those that might be in more rural might have less access. But it's not to sort of diminish the impact that partners can make, because we have, and again, you'll see that if you engage with the critical conversations with HMI webinar that we did, and it's on the other resources, that some of the examples from that are from like the islands and up north. So, and they were really impactful. And again, the partners that are there are much less abundant than they would in maybe some central areas in the Western Belt. Yes, Victoria, the recording will be shared. So what we will do is after it's done today, we'll make sure that anything's edited together, and any sort of parts that need to be kind of cut out, they'll be sort of chopped off, and we'll share the recording with all the participants on the sign up list today. And I think one of the things to highlight was that specifically our contact emails are on the presentation today. So if you're interested in linking with myself and Laura and getting a bit more of a deeper dive into your individual setting, the way we are made up in Education Scotland is we have local authority contacts for each of the sort of specialisms, such as primary, secondary, CLD, and all the specialisms such as STEM, parental and family, parental engagement and family learning. So we have those sort of local authority contacts. I think this makes something we could put in the chat actually, Laura, that would be quite useful. I'll just do that just now if you want to continue with the questions.
Yeah, I can't see the questions because I've got the presentation up, Jim.
Oh, sorry, of course you can.
Maybe we could send them out afterwards.
So, Mrs. Jensen, that's good to hear that you found the attendance policy exemplars on our website useful. Again, the process of what we've developed here is not to tell you how to do it. It's to give you improvement strategies to figure out the solutions yourself in a way that we know that works. So with regards to the policy and how that's been done in the statutory requirements, but also with this work, we know it works because we've consulted widely across the country. Sandra, just come to your question. I would like to see how useful they look. I'm looking forward to have a better look. Yes. Yeah, at the moment when it comes to case studies, we've actually done a lot of work in regards to that and caption case studies. We did reach out to local authorities back in September. And again, we know how busy everybody is and sometimes information doesn't reach everybody. We are always looking to add to that. So our exemplification element, which has been shared in March, there's a number of local authorities there, but we're always looking to add to that. So if you feel like it is an example you would like to share, they might not be included specifically in that release. Please get in touch with myself or Laura just to see if that's something we can look to capture from yourself in a way that's doable within the timeframes.
And I think also just on the case studies, Jamie, before you go on, just for an awareness for folks on the call, that the case studies cover quite a diverse range of examples. So, as an example, there is one that, partners are really focused, for instance, on work that they're doing with, parents and carers, if you like. There's, another one that's much more focused on young people and mental health. So those case studies we've got coming out are quite diverse in terms of what they capture. So yeah, they'll be published in March. So worthwhile looking out for them.
Just to pick up on your point there, Don, the visualizer resources, yeah, they are something specifically we wanted to create because we know that having a text heavy element of a resource sometimes can be a bit overwhelming, but also not very conducive. But sometimes that adds the finer detail that's required. So we wanted the kind of symbiosis of both to allow that kind of natural discussion, especially with partners, but also involving children, young people, and their families. So they're designed to be used in that way to take you through a journey of how to use them effectively. And I felt that that's something that was quite well received. Jennifer, just to respond to your question there in regards to third sector and funding streams, absolutely. Sustainability is something that's often a challenge. We are aware of different third sector organisations that have used PEF money and linked to the school, and there's been that shared use of PEF money. But also in the same instance, some third sector organisation have got funding from other sources like Big Lottery or other kind of funding streams, national funding streams, even the Scottish Government, and they have outcomes to achieve that naturally coalesce with what the schools are looking to do. So even though funding is often a challenge, you sometimes will find that third sectors are quite happy and quite keen to work with schools because ultimately the outcomes they're trying to achieve for their funding is similar to the outcomes that schools are trying to achieve for their children and young people. And Miss McShane, just your question there. Will the case studies be added to the website resources you've displayed today? The same area that we showed at the start, that Attendance in Scotland's page, that's where everything will live. So our case studies, and we're calling them quite quintessentially how-to guides. So we've created them in such a way to really go into the granular detail of how a partnership and school model has been created, and all the elements like what were the outcomes, who was involved, how often did it run. These case studies will be in that exact same area in our partnership section, and there'll be a subsection that will exist there about how-to guides that you can go into and have a look. Sandra, just that's a really key point there about funded alliance through the third sector organisations to support attendance through the whole Family Wellbeing Fund programme. Yes, that's again a really good use of that funding stream, and it just demonstrates again that those funding streams don't need to sit solely within the school establishment, and again within partnerships, be it community learning development or third sector. These various aspects of partnerships have their own funding streams that look to complement the work that's already been done in the formal education setting. And again, attendance is such a big factor when it comes to that. Just while I'm going to look quickly at the Slido questions, if you want to move on, Laura, just to say we've got a little evaluation, and if only takes, I promise, a couple of minutes to do, and it helps us understand what's sort of been done today and if it's been useful. But our evaluation helps steer the sort of work that we do and ultimately the direction of travel when it comes to the attendance work stream. I would say it's really important to keep an eye on our sort of Education Scotland social media feeds. Hopefully a lot of you have noticed that that's where this information has came from. For example, we have another webinar next week with YouthLink Scotland, who've already developed a range of resources as well that can be used to improve attendance. Some very unique ones around about how utilising personal achievement can support improved attendance within school settings. So again, that's something that I would encourage you to keep an eye on. If you've not looked at the Education Scotland's Twitter feed at any point, that's the best way to find that kind of evidence. And also our Eventbrite, where all our kind of programmes live. But I can see that we've got no questions in the Slido, so everybody's been nice and brave and done it on the chat. That's fine. It's always just to give that sort of opportunity. But yeah, that's something that hopefully it's been quite useful in regards to like answering those questions and covering it. Our aspiration after our session's done today is to get these slides packaged up and sent out to everybody just so you have access to them. The links for everything here are in those slides, but also they're in the chat page. Apart from the local authority contacts one, that's one that I've just put in before there. That tells you who the local authority contacts are for each of your local authorities based on the themes I mentioned before. But yeah, that's our kind of email addresses are there if you sort of want to reach out in anything specific. Laura, do you want to add anything else or any other specific bits that I've missed?
You've been really, really thorough. Again, just a huge thank you to everybody for coming along today. It's really great for people to engage with us, and also for any comments in the chat. It's really helpful. The questions that we receive or any comments that we get, it just really helps in terms of what we've developed, but actually what we're continuing to develop in future. So as Jamie said, please do feel free if you want to drop us an email, if you have something that you're maybe thinking of that would be useful going forward, please do let us know. And really linked to that is please do fill in the evaluation. Hopefully you can get that from the QR code, and I'm sure Jamie have put the bit.ly link in the comments. So please do. It only takes a couple of minutes, and there is an opportunity in there so that if there is things that you're thinking of that actually it would be useful for you to have going forward in future, we do try and collate those and look at those so that we can think about them when we're developing any future phases.